Pacific sky is still dark. U.S. satellites pick up a flash missile launches from deep inside China. Within minutes, secure lines buzz from Hawaii to Washington. Orders are given. Tomahawk missiles launch from destroyers. Stealth bombers already in the air turn toward their targets. In just 14 minutes, 3 Chinese missile bases are gone. Fireballs light the horizon. The threat is neutralized before the first enemy missile reaches the sea. Stay with us. We'll break down how this strike happened, step by step. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. You won't want to miss the full story. For years, the South China Sea has been a tense chessboard. China claims almost the entire region as its own, building islands, runways, and missile sites to enforce its control. The United States rejects those claims and sails its warships through the area to prove the waters are free for all nations. These freedom of navigation patrols have become routine, but every patrol carries risk. At the heart of the tension is China's rocket force. This branch of the People's Liberation Army controls the nation's vast arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles. These weapons are designed to keep the U.S. Navy away from Chinese shores. Among them are the DF-21D carrier killer and the DF-26 intermediate-range missile. They can strike moving ships hundreds or thousands of miles away. A full volley could sink a carrier strike group if left unanswered. In recent months, U.S. intelligence saw something unusual. Satellite photos showed 3 major Chinese missile bases going on high alert. Mobile launchers were moved out of storage shelters. Support vehicles dispersed. Activity around command bunkers increased. The pattern was clear to analysts. China was preparing for possible launches. Washington watched closely. The Pentagon's Pacific Command raised its readiness level. A U.S. carrier strike group moved into the Philippine Sea, within striking range, but outside immediate threat range. Reconnaissance drones and P-8 maritime patrol aircraft flew near China's coast, feeding real-time data back to analysts. Diplomatically, warnings were exchanged. The United States demanded that China de-escalate and pull its missile brigades back to garrison. Beijing refused, accusing Washington of provocation. Tensions grew after Chinese jets buzzed a U.S. patrol plane in international airspace. Analysts feared that the situation could spiral into direct conflict with little warning. In the Situation Room, military planners briefed senior leaders. They laid out options from surveillance to limited strikes. The risk of waiting was clear. If China launched first, U.S. carriers and bases could be hit. The risk of acting first was just as heavy: escalation to a major war. The decision came after another round of intelligence confirmed that missiles were now fully fueled and ready to fire. Such a state they could launch with minutes' notice. The President approved a preemptive strike designed to disable the bases before they could be used. The order was transmitted through Pacific Command to the fleet. This would not be a drawn-out campaign. The goal was speed and precision, neutralize the threat, and limit casualties. U.S. submarines, destroyers, and long-range bombers were placed in position. Cyber units prepared to jam Chinese radars and cut communications. Tankers topped off the bombers' fuel to keep them airborne until the strike window opened. Every detail mattered. The strike had to hit all 3 bases nearly at once to prevent China from launching before impact. It had to be accurate enough to destroy launchers and command posts without hitting civilian areas. And it had to send a message that the U.S. was ready to defend its forces and allies if necessary. The clock was ticking. The world held its breath. The stage was set for one of the fastest and most decisive strikes in modern naval history. The strike began with a coded transmission at 4:16 a.m. Across the Pacific, crews aboard U.S. destroyers opened their vertical launch cells. The first Tomahawk cruise missile roared into the night sky. Seconds later, dozens more followed, rising one after another in rapid succession. These missiles flew low over the water, hugging the sea to avoid radar detection. At the same moment, 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers turned toward their targets deep inside China. They had been circling quietly, waiting for the order. Their bomb bays opened, releasing GPS-guided JDAMs programmed for hardened bunkers and launch pads. The bombers stayed invisible to radar, gliding at high altitude. Within minutes, Chinese early warning radars lit up with blips. Operators scrambled to identify the incoming threats. Alarms sounded across the missile bases. Mobile launch crews raced to prepare their weapons, but they had little time. The first impacts came at 4:23 a.m. A Tomahawk slammed into the command center of Base 1, detonating with surgical precision. The explosion collapsed the communications bunker, cutting off the site from higher command. Secondary blasts followed as fuel trucks and ammunition stores went up in flames. 2 minutes later, Base 2 was hit. A mix of Tomahawks and JDAMs struck its launch silos in quick succession. Satellite images would later show blackened craters where concrete pads once stood. Fires raged as missile warheads cooked off in massive secondary explosions, lighting the early morning sky. By 4:28 a.m., Base 3 was under attack. This site housed some of China's longest-range missiles, capable of striking Guam or even Hawaii. The strike package included penetrating munitions designed to punch through reinforced hangars. Each detonation sent shockwaves through the ground, collapsing tunnels and storage facilities. Chinese air defenses fired back. HQ-29 surface-to-air missiles streaked upward, trying to intercept the incoming wave. Some Tomahawks were shot down, but the salvo was too large to stop. Radar operators reported multiple hits across all 3 sites. At sea, U.S. destroyers and submarines kept launching until every planned target had been assigned at least one missile. E-2D Hawkeye aircraft monitored the strike from a distance, confirming impacts and scanning for any Chinese counter-launches. By 4:30 a.m., the bulk of the mission was complete. In less than 14 minutes, 3 major missile bases had been rendered inoperable. Satellite feeds showed burning launchers, shattered radar domes, and columns of smoke rising thousands of feet into the air. Inside China's Rocket Force headquarters, commanders faced silence from the frontline units. Communications were cut, launchers destroyed, radars blinded. Attempts to coordinate a counterstrike stalled as cyber operations disrupted command networks. For U.S. forces, the danger was not yet over. Strike planners braced for a possible retaliatory volley from any surviving mobile launchers. Carrier strike groups moved to high alert. Aegis cruisers kept their radars locked on, ready to intercept anything that might come back at them. But no missiles launched. The combined shock of the precision strike and the collapse of command systems appeared to have paralyzed the Chinese response. Fighter jets scrambled from inland airfields, but by the time they reached the coast, the B-2 bombers were already heading home, still undetected. At 4:35 a.m., Pacific Command confirmed mission success. All 3 missile bases had been neutralized, with minimal collateral damage. The preemptive strike had removed a major threat before it could be used, and it had done so with speed, precision, and overwhelming coordination. The world would wake up hours later to headlines describing one of the fastest and most decisive U.S. military operations since the Gulf War. The success of the 14-minute strike came from planning, precision, and technology working together. Every weapon and system was chosen to achieve maximum effect with minimum warning. The backbone of the attack was the Tomahawk cruise missile. Tomahawks are long-range, subsonic missiles that can fly over 1,000 miles. They are guided by GPS and terrain-matching radar, which allows them to skim just a few hundred feet above the ground or sea. This low-flight profile keeps them under enemy radar coverage until the last minute. Each Tomahawk carries a 1,000-pound warhead, enough to destroy command bunkers, radar dishes, or hardened launch pads. Launch platforms were spread across the Pacific. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and Virginia-class submarines fired the opening salvos. Using multiple launch points confused Chinese radar operators, making it harder to track the entire attack. Vertical launch system cells allow each ship to fire dozens of missiles in minutes, creating a dense, staggered wave that arrives almost simultaneously at multiple targets. Air power played a key role. The B-2 Spirit bomber was designed for this mission. Its flying wing design and radar-absorbent coating make it nearly invisible to radar. Each B-2 can carry up to 40,000 pounds of weapons. For this mission, they carried JDM's Joint Direct Attack munitions, which are smart bombs guided by GPS and inertial navigation. These bombs are accurate within a few meters, making them perfect for destroying specific launch pads, tunnels, and hardened storage sites. Timing was critical. The missiles and bombers had to hit their targets within a narrow window to prevent the bases from launching in response. Strike planners used satellite data and real-time surveillance from RQ-4. Global Hawk drones to map every target and calculate flight times down to the second. Even the refueling of bombers was scheduled to keep them loitering until the moment of attack. Electronic warfare and cyber operations supported the strike. U.S. cyber teams disrupted Chinese communications and targeting networks moments before the first missiles launched. This delay meant that even if Chinese commanders detected the attack, their ability to coordinate a response was slowed. At the same time, EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft jammed enemy radar systems, reducing the effectiveness of surface-to-air missile batteries. Another critical factor was intelligence preparation. Weeks before the strike, satellites tracked every movement at the missile bases. Analysts built 3D models of the facilities, identifying the exact locations of command centers, fuel depots, and missile storage. This level of detail allowed planners to match the right weapon to each target. Tomahawks were used against radar and communications nodes, while bunker-buster bombs hit reinforced command posts. The operation demonstrated the U.S. military's doctrine of prompt global strike, the ability to hit any target on Earth within minutes of detection. It also showed the power of joint operations, where Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and Cyber Command assets worked together as a single, synchronized system. Finally, speed of execution was key. The entire strike lasted less than a quarter of an hour. By the time the first explosions were detected, the last wave of missiles was already seconds from impact. This left Chinese commanders no time to relocate mobile launchers or fire a retaliatory salvo. This combination of long-range precision strike weapons, stealth platforms, electronic warfare, and real-time intelligence made the mission a showcase of modern warfare. Proved that fixed missile bases, even those deep inside defended territory, can be destroyed quickly if detected and targeted with enough coordination. When the strike ended, the battlefield picture changed fast. 3 missile bases were damaged or destroyed inside a 14-minute window. Command centers lay in ruins. Radar arrays were burned out. Launchers were smashed or buried. Analysts estimated a sharp drop in the immediate missile threat to U.S. forces and regional bases. That fall in capability bought time. Time to reposition forces. Time to reload and resupply. Time to build new defenses. The U.S. Navy and Air Force regained local air and sea superiority for the short term. Carrier strike groups and Allied ships could operate with less immediate risk from fixed missile brigades. At the same time, the strike cost the U.S. in resources. Dozens of Tomahawks and multiple heavy bombs were spent. Each Tomahawk can cost roughly $1 million. JDAMs and bomber sorties add millions more. The operation was precise, but it was not cheap. Politically, capitals reacted fast. Washington called emergency meetings with allies in Tokyo, Canberra, and London. Leaders issued warnings and sought de-escalation. Beijing condemned the attacks. State media called the strikes illegal and provocative. Diplomatic channels ran hot. United Nations held an emergency session to discuss the crisis. World markets felt the shock. Oil and shipping insurance rates spiked on news of major strikes so close to key sea lanes. Companies watched supply chains nervously. Militarily, the strike produced clear short-term wins and hard lessons. The destroyed bases removed fixed targeting nodes and some missile stocks. But mobile launchers and hidden depots remained a threat. Intelligence teams warned that China would disperse forces and hide assets better. PLA units would adapt by using mobile launchers, camouflage shelters, and redundant command nodes. Cyber and electronic warfare had helped cripple communications during the attack. China vowed to harden networks and push more anti-access tools into service. For S forces, the engagement validated joint doctrine, Navy, Air Force, Space, and Cyber working together. It also exposed logistic strains. Resupplying strike missiles and sustaining bomber presence required rapid planning. Planners pushed ships toward the region and sent more munitions and fuel. Allies bolstered patrols and offered basing support. On the human side, civilian casualties were reportedly low in the target zones due to careful target selection and timing. Still, local communities faced damage to infrastructure and short-term humanitarian needs. Aid routes and emergency teams were ready to reduce harm and stabilize the areas around the strike sites. From a strategic view, the U.S. showed it could act fast and hit deep. That message reached friend and foe alike. It reassured allies of US resolve. It warned adversaries that fixed missile power is vulnerable, but it also raised the risk of retaliation. Beijing could respond in many ways: cyber attacks, naval shadowing, economic pressure, or strikes against different targets. The world now faced a tense period of uncertainty. Diplomats worked to open backchannels to avoid further escalation. Military planners on both sides prepared for the next move. The strike solved an immediate danger, but it also began a new chapter of risk and competition in the region. The 14-minute strike will be studied for years as a case of precision warfare in the missile age. It showed that the U.S. can act faster than many thought possible. It proved that fixed missile sites, once considered untouchable without major war, can be taken out in minutes. For American allies in the Pacific, the operation was reassurance. For China, it was a warning. The U.S. showed it can blind, jam, and strike deep, even against heavily defended targets. But it also opened a new era of risk. Every action invites a reaction. China will rebuild its missile brigades and spread them out, making them harder to hit next time. It may invest even more in mobile launchers and hypersonic weapons. Each side now knows how close they came to escalation and how quickly a crisis could turn into a wider war. For military planners, the lesson is clear. Speed and precision now rule the battlefield. Future wars will be measured in minutes, not weeks. Decisions made in 1 hour could decide the outcome of an entire campaign. The side that can sense, decide, and strike first will have the advantage. And for ordinary people watching from afar, this strike was a reminder that global security is fragile. A single event can shake markets, reroute shipping, and put entire regions on edge. Diplomacy becomes more urgent when the weapons involved can destroy targets half a continent away in less than a quarter of an hour. The question now is whether this strike was the end of a standoff or the first move in a much longer contest. The Pacific will remain a place of tension. The U.S. and its allies will need to stay ready. China will be watching and preparing its next step. If you found this breakdown